But the truth is, distractions reveal our hidden priorities. See, there is a priority hidden there all along, and you were not aware of it until a distraction came along. Maybe you have a hidden priority around comfort, and you just want to be comfortable. Maybe you have a hidden priority around people pleasing, and you just want everyone to like you. Maybe you have a hidden priority around wealth and accumulating more money. And you don't say it that way, you don't even think about it, but then a distraction comes along. And all of a sudden, what your stated priorities are, those get hijacked for something that wasn't even on your list. We're wrapping up our series today, and part 4 and 5 are kind of like two parts of the same sermon, because last week we began the story of a man named Nehemiah who lived in the year 450 BC. Nehemiah was a Jewish man, but he lived in the Persian Empire. He worked for the most powerful man in the world, King Artaxerxes, and one day he got a report that the city of Jerusalem was a mess. The city walls were lying in rubble. They had been that way for 141 years. Everybody knew it, but when the news got to Nehemiah, he suddenly realized with clarity, no one's ever going to solve this problem. It's going to be this way forever, and it absolutely broke his heart. And even though he lived 900 miles away, even though he was incredibly comfortable and had a great job, he decided he was the one to do something about it. So after praying about it, he had the opportunity to get permission to travel to Jerusalem and begin work on rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. So he went to Jerusalem, he assessed the situation, and he rallied the entire city to the cause. He says, "You see what kind of trouble we're in. You see what kind of trouble we're in without city walls to protect us. Let's rebuild the walls." And so the entire town got to work. And in this, we learned a principle about the church, which is what we've been talking about in this series. What we learned last week is that your level of engagement determines our level of impact. When the entire city of Jerusalem rallied around one cause, they were able to make progress on a cause that no one had done anything about for 141 years. The same is true for the church. What we know about the church is that Jesus died for the sins of the world. What we know about the church is that God wants all people to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. The limiting factor on what we do as a church is not God. God wants more people saved in Lake Country. He wants more people saved in Watertown. He wants more people saved all over southeastern and south central Wisconsin. God is not the limiting factor in what we're doing. We are. And it's our level of engagement as a church that will determine our level of impact. And so the entire city rallied around this cause and got to work with Nehemiah, rebuilding the city walls of Jerusalem. Now today, what we're going to discover is that there are going to be some distractions for Nehemiah in this project. There are going to be some distractions that can reveal whether or not he has any hidden priorities. Now, what's interesting about Nehemiah is the entire book, it's just his memoirs. He wrote 13 chapters. The whole thing is he's just retelling his life story, beginning with rebuilding the city walls of Jerusalem. And in the very last sentence of the book, the very last sentence of his memoirs, he tells us what his top priority was, at least what he thought it was. This was his top priority in Nehemiah 13. He said, "Remember me with favor, oh my God." He said, "For me, this is what it's all about. I want God to remember me with favor. I want everything I do to be for the glory of God. I want everything I do to be for the honor of God. I want everything I do to be of eternal significance. I want to love God well. I want to love and serve the people who are made in God's image." And that's the reason why he went to work rebuilding the city walls. The city of Jerusalem was the Lord's city on planet Earth. The peoples of the nations were to look at Jerusalem, the people who worship the Lord, and say, "Wow, your God is a special kind of God." But the people had abandoned the worship of God long ago, so God let invaders come in, and now they said, "Wow, who's your God?" But Nehemiah knew if he could rebuild the city walls of Jerusalem, the city could revitalize, and the name of the Lord would be honored again in his generation. That's his top priority. But the distractions came in the form of opposition. In and around the city of Jerusalem, there were some regional governors, warlords, people who are not exactly happy to see the city of Jerusalem being rebuilt. You see, if the city of Jerusalem gained more prominence and more power, that would come at the expense of their prominence. in their power. They could no longer bully Jerusalem. Jerusalem would no longer be the skinny kid on the beach. If they had city walls, they could raise their own army. They would have their own security. They could have their own stable economy. So these regional powers, led by a man named Sanballat, went to work to demoralize the project and the people who were working on the project with Nehemiah in order to make it fail. Here are some examples in Nehemiah chapter 4. When Sanballat, he's one of those regional governors, heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. You get bonus points if you use the word incensed at any time this week. He ridiculed the Jews, and in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, "What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Now, in the BC era, this was a sick burn, just so you know. And the first step in rallying opposition against someone is to dehumanize them, to mock them, to make fun of them, to put labels on them. And that's what he begins doing with his associates, with the army of Samaria. He begins rallying and stirring up opposition. Nehemiah hears about it. There's nothing he can do about what they're saying about him, so he prays and he continues to work. So Sanballat ups the opposition. Verse 7. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the people of Ashdod heard that repairs to Jerusalem's wall had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. This is a 5-nation army. They are 2 nations away from going to Wichita, but they have 5 nations, and they're going to go to Jerusalem to oppose it. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. So now they're not just making fun. Now they're drawing up an attack plan on how to align their 5 armies to go and attack the city of Jerusalem before they can finish rebuilding the walls. Now, this began to demoralize the people. Meanwhile, the people in Judah, that's the area around Jerusalem, said the strength of the laborers is giving out. And there is so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall. Also, our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them and will kill them and put an end to the work. Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Their campaign is working. The strength of the laborers is giving out. The people are afraid. They're going to attack us while we're still rebuilding the wall, before we can finish the project, while we're exhausted. The city of Jerusalem is going to be surrounded. They are going to slaughter us. And the fear takes hold. So Nehemiah responded, first of all, again, with prayer. At every turn, Nehemiah is a man of prayer. And then he says, new plan, everyone. We're going to take shifts. We're going to have one shift of workers and a second shift of guards while the first shift is working. And then when you're done working, you're going to post the guard while the other shift goes to work. And while you're working, you're going to have a trowel in one hand and a sword in the other, and we are going to continue. This is going to slow us down, but we will not stop this project. We will continue to make progress. So he adjusts his plan, and driven by his top priority to honor the name of his God, Nehemiah and the people continue the work. Well, when Sanballat and company recognize that nothing they are doing is slowing them down, he realizes that the embodiment of this priority of rebuilding the city of wall in Jerusalem is living in Nehemiah himself. They don't need to take out all the people. They can just take out the general. If they strike the shepherd, the sheep are going to scatter. So he adjusts his plan in order to try to assassinate Nehemiah. Here's what happens in chapter 6. When word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies that I had rebuilt the wall and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors in the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message: come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. So they get the entire wall rebuilt, 2.5 miles long, 12 feet tall, 8 feet thick. The wall, the stonework, the masonry is done, but they haven't yet put the gates in place. And Sanballat realizes this is his last chance before Jerusalem is a secure city. So he sends a letter to Nehemiah. Messenger comes up, rattles his letter, says, "Sir, you got a letter?" Nehemiah opens it. He reads it. It says, "Hey, Nehemiah, Sanballat here. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I'd really love to clear the air. There's a nice coffee shop in Ono. What if we got together and we tried to figure this out together?" That's the message he gets. But, Nehemiah says, they were scheming to harm me, so I sent messengers to them with this reply: I am carrying on a great project, and I cannot go down. I am carrying on a great project, and I cannot go down.